Okay, so we will continue with this week lecture for part 2, which will revolve around reading and writing. So for reading, we will just focus on skimming and scanning, the difference between skimming and scanning. And for writing part, we'll focus on the difference between compound, complex sentence, and the use of these two tenses in sentences, which is continuous tenses and perfect tenses. So, in terms of reading skills, you will be focusing on how to apply skimming and scanning technique, because for your reading test, you will get a long passage, and it is important for you to skim and scan, to use these two techniques when you want to answer your question rather than reading the whole text. That will take up a lot of time. So this technique, skimming and scanning, will help you a lot in terms of trying to find the answers based on the passage. And also, we want you to be able to identify the main ideas and the specific information needed. Okay, for example, in the question asks you about the specific information, so how do you identify those things? And also, we want to improve your reading efficiency. We want you to read efficiently rather than read everything. Okay, so the difference between skimming is like you flip through everything, you read quickly to get the general idea, the gist of it, what the passage is trying to say, what is the general idea of the passage. So usually we will focus on the titles, the headings, and the first and the last sentence, or it can be in the form of the introduction. So for skimming, you do not read every single thing. Don't read every single thing. Okay, reading every word will take a lot of time. So skimming is just you flip through the passage. You tengok just skim through everything. Okay. So when to use skimming? Okay, skimming you can use it before you do the detailed reading. First round of it, try to skim everything. Try to understand the topic quickly, what the passage is trying to say. Let's say the topic is about the advantages of jogging. So that is the topic. That is the general idea. The passage want to talk about the benefit of jogging. Okay? And then when to use skimming is when you want to decide if a text is relevant or not. Okay, let's move on to scanning. Scanning is different from skimming. Scanning is you try to find specific information. You scan, you tengok betul-betul. For example, the question asks you about the disadvantages. So, when you look at the passage, try to find the keyword. Focus on the keyword. Oh, disadvantages. Paragraph 4, for example. Okay? And for scanning, usually we focus on the names, the date, the numbers, or the keywords. So, scanning, you find the intended keyword. Cari keyword yang diperlukan based on the question. So, as simple as this table, the difference between skimming and scanning. Kalau skimming, you want to know the general idea, but for scanning, you want to search for the specific detail. For skimming, it is fast reading and you read the whole text. You skim the whole text, but for scanning, you find the targeted search and particular info only. So, as tips for effective reading, okay, I know it's better to read word by word. Okay, maybe during the first round of reading, read word by word, but later, use your eyes to move quickly. Don't read word by word. And then look for keywords. Okay, look for keywords based on the question. And if you find those unfamiliar words, you can just ignore it. If it's not important, if it's not needed, just ignore the unfamiliar words for a while. Okay, so let's look at this practice. Okay, practice 1. Title: the benefits of morning exercise. Okay, so morning exercise is becoming increasingly popular among students and working adults. Many people believe that exercising early in the day helps improve focus and productivity. For example, A short jog or stretching session can increase energy levels and reduce stress. In addition, morning workouts help individuals maintain consistent routine, unlike evening exercise, which can be interrupted by morning exercise is easier to commit to. As a result, people who exercise in the morning are more likely to stay active in the long term. So, based on the passage, what is the main topic of the passage? So, the main topic is actually telling you about morning exercise or morning jog. Okay, what is the writer's main idea? The main idea is telling you about how morning exercise is advantageous for working adults. Does the writer support morning exercise? Based on what you've read, do you think the writer supports morning exercise? Yes, okay, because everything he wrote is about the benefits of it. Okay, let's look at practice 2. UiTM library announcement. The University Library will extend its operating hours during examination period. Starting from 10 April, the library will open from 8 a.m. to 12 midnight. Students are reminded to bring student ID at all times. Group discussion rooms can be booked online through library portal. For further information, please contact library staff. Okay, so when will the new hours start? 10 April. What time does the library close? 12 midnight. What must student bring? Student ID cards. How can the student book the discussion room? Online library portal. What is the contact number? 0412345567. So, this is the question that revolves around scanning specific information. Okay, different from this question, it is more general. Okay, so now we will focus on writing skills. So it is different from LCC111. For this time around, your writing skill will revolve around expository essay. So it is important to know complex and compound sentences so that it will help you in writing skills. Okay. So now let's refresh our memory about compound sentences. So what is compound sentences? Compound sentences is not simple sentence. It involves two independent clauses that is joined by this word and, but, so, or. For example, here it says, I was tired, but I finished my homework. So, I was tired is independent clause 1. I finished my homework is independent clause 2. It is combined by the word but here. So, this is the example of compound sentences. Independent clause is joined by the connectors and, but, so, or. Okay? But for complex is different from compound. If complex, you have one independent and one dependent clause. Okay, let's refresh our memory. Independent clause, you are not depending on anything. You can stand by your own. If it's dependent clause, you have to depend on something else. For example, although I was tired is the dependent clause, because let's say although I was tired, if it's a full sentence, it's not a complete sentence. Although I was tired, that's it. The sentence is not complete. If I finish my homework, it is considered as a complete sentence. So one independent clause is I finished my homework. One dependent clause is although I was tired. So complex sentence, it combines both independent and dependent clause. So although I was tired, I finished my homework. Okay, sebab kalau you cakap although I was tired ni ayat penuh, ayat dia tak penuh. Macam okay, although I was tired, okay, so so ayat dia tak penuh dan makna dia tak sampai. So to make sure that the sentence is complete, although I was tired, you have to add one independent clause. I finished my homework. So that is the difference between compound and complex. Alright, So now we'll move on to continuous tenses. Okay, continuous, based on the word continue, it shows ongoing action. Perkataan ni, tenses ni berkaitan dengan benda yang berlaku continuously, ongoing, dia tak habis lagi. So usually we use am, is, are plus the verb ing. For example, she is studying right now. Dia sedang belajar sekarang. Aktiviti tu tak habis lagi. Dia masih lagi tengah study sekarang. So she is studying right now. It shows ongoing. It still happen. But let's say perfect tense. Perfect tense, it shows something that has been completed. Dah habis. For example, you use the word has or have plus past participle. So she has finished her work. Dah habis. Action tu which is finish her work. Action tu dah habis. So she has finished her work. Okay, everything has been completed. So, in terms of combining these two tenses, okay, you can try to write something like this. You use the correct tenses in the sentence, combines the idea clearly. For example, she has been studying and she is preparing for her exam. This is has been studying, completed, and ongoing. She is preparing for her exam. Dia masih lagi tengah study. She has been studying from last week, and now she is preparing for her exam. So that's another way to combine different tenses or different grammar in writing. So that's it about both writing and reading for this week. Okay, so I hope that it is clear. And don't worry, we will be meeting each other next week on Tuesday. So I will give you some exercise for you to do. Just wait for my cue inside our Telegram, okay? And please join the Google Classroom. Thank you.